Dale.
What sculpture is to block of marble education is to solve. This quote has stayed with me throughout my journey as an educator. It came to life when I had the opportunity to see how marble artisans work. At first, each block of marble seemed the same, cold, hard, heavy, but then each one has its own shape, its unique possibility. Once a marble artisan told me something that I will never forget. He told me, every block of marble, every stone has its own character. What works for one could break another. And since then, I always ask myself, am I designing learning situations so that every student finds their shape, or only for those who are ready for it? For me, teaching is like a sculpture. It requires listening, observing the differences and needs of every student, and carefully carving, so that every student finds their way to shine. Good morning, President and members of the panel. My name is Paula Carmona. I'm following the order 21st of February 2025. I'm going to present my year plan called Carving Our Wall. It is designed for a group of 24 students of fourth compulsory secondary education. There are 15 boys and 9 girls, and regarding attention to diversity, we have 2 retakers, 2 students with painting English, and 1 student with ADHD. As they are in compulsory secondary education, they have to decide whether to continue their studies or join to the labor market. They have chosen applied mathematics because they want to continue with humanities or general post-compulsory secondary education, or join some vocational training courses. The last option is the most popular among my students. So it's true that they often show a lack of motivation regarding academic studies. But they are quite mature for their age, and they know that they must finish compulsory secondary education and have an acceptable grade if they want to join these vocational training courses. Regarding their achievement level, they have B1, B1 plus, standing out 2 cases of 2 students who are preparing C1. But in general, they show an acceptable performance. The high school has around 500 students, and it offers compulsory and post-compulsory secondary education for teenagers and adults, and also vocational training courses such as international commerce, administration, or natural STEM. It's worth mentioning that these vocational training courses have agreement with some local companies so that students can carry out the internships in them, so that they can help them to enter the labor market. Besides, this high school it's very active and dynamic, and it takes part in different plans and projects. For example, co-education to promote gender equality, with heterogeneous groups, the vocabulary, and also the celebration of some dates, such as the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, as you can see in the didactic unit number 9, and also SIGMA project, which will be worked throughout the year with different areas such as art, creativity, and culture, and also different fields, lines of action, such as Andalusian culture, for example, and also e-twinning. My students will be in contact with some Italian students from Luca, and they will be researching and analyzing their area so they can compare both backgrounds. They both, so Luca and this town, have in common the marble industry now that the context has been stated, we will move on to the legal requirements which sets the curriculum. For the European level, we find the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, which is a non-legally binding document. For the national level, we have the law and the Royal Decree 217/2022. And for the regional level, so our autonomous community, we find the Decree 102/2023 and the Order 30th of May 2023. We also find the instruction of the 28th of November for the Andalusian bilingual centers, as my high school is a bilingual one. Moving to the curricular elements, we are going to explain it from the more general to the more specific one. So first, we find the pedagogical principles, and all of them have been taken into account when designing this year plan and didactic unit. But we can highlight 8 for reading comprehension in the different test types that I have mentioned before. C for ICTs, as we are going to make use of different digital resources such as Canva, Flickrs, quizzes, or E for universal design for learning, as I always take into account inclusive practices. Then we find state goals. And we as English teacher can highlight I for the knowledge of different one or more foreign languages, and also G for the knowing of our culture and that of others. Regarding key competencies, there are 8 of them, and they are considered equally important, and they are not confined to a single subject. They are worked in an interdisciplinary way, such as state goals that we have mentioned before, and you can see on my year plan on page 15 how our English subjects contribute to the acquisition of these key competencies. These key competencies are also linked to the operational descriptors of the departure profile, which must be achieved by the end of compulsory secondary education. So it's very important for us because we are in 4th year. These operational descriptors join key competencies with specific competencies, which are specific for our subjects, and we have 6 of them. Comprehension, production, interaction, mediation, the use of knowledge of different linguistic repertoire, and also cultural patterns. We achieve them by the use of different basic knowledge, which are set in different blocks, such as communication, plurilingualism, and interculturality. Both specific competencies and basic knowledge can be found in the Order 30th of May 2023. And these theoretically sound very well, but how I'm going to teach? Next section will deal with methodology, which is defined by Noonan as a set of methods which established for a specific specific objective, in which the teacher has to have an active role in the design of her methodology. The methodology must be active, engaging, and motivated. And one of my main aims is to empower students so that they can become independent learners who can question, express, and analyze express themselves in a foreign language with fluency and accuracy. And I want to do this in a motivating and participatory learning environment. And a key aspect for me to achieve this is classroom management. collaborative assessment. Besides, organization is essential for this, so my sessions always start with a daily agenda, which is basically a presentation displayed in the board in which I show my students the structure of the class, the learning objectives, the materials required, and sometimes a reminder or a warm-up. Also in classroom, my students will find a weekly planning so they know what they have to do every day, and this is very useful for absent students. Besides, in this platform, they find reinforcement and extra or additional practice for those students who need attending to julio. Other strategies are a reward system or the use of Discord, which I use as a virtual classroom. So thanks to the educational emails of my students, I can create a class and different chats. And one of the most used chats is the one titled Doubts for the Exam. And basically, my students and I, we arrange a time and a day where students can ask me questions and doubts about the test or anything that they want to ask me. And it's very useful because every single student of the class can see the question and my answer, which is more beneficial than a one-to-one chat. Then moving to the methodologies that I use task-based learning, which are real-world tasks, such as the final products of the learning situations, in which students use the language in context. Then we also have comparative learning, which is very useful as it promotes autonomy, collaboration, communication, and decision making. Then we have flipped classroom, where the content is studied at home and class time is devoted to more personalized and active learning. And finally, learning stations, where different stations are in the class devoted to different skills, and students make use of this methodology before the creation of the final product as a revision. They will have a group sheet in which they write the answers of the different stations, and this group sheet serves me as a kind of evidence to know what they have done in class. It's very useful for my ADHD student as it allows movement in class and also fragmentation of tasks, which is very beneficial for him. Besides, I would like to highlight the use of metacognition, which is another key aspect in my methodology. Metacognition allows students to reflect on the learning process and helps me to know what they know. And that way they are more engaged in the learning process, they are more competent and also more independent. And there are several strategies such as essay tickets or tag feedback, but we are going to see more examples in the explanation of the didactic unit. We also have to mention different complementary and extracurricular activities, such as Halloween or a solidarity race or market in the didactic unit number 5. And of the first term, the science week in the second term, and also the entrepreneurship days in the third term. And finally, regarding the resources, I have made use of different resources, both physical, such as text, reading, or the material for the learning stations, and also digital, such as Canva, Flickr, or quizzes, as I said before. Now, moving to the attention to diversity. You can see on page number 26 of my year plan the different I make use of this. I always take into account the three different principles of UGL with the specific samples of each of the guidelines on page 27 and 28 of my year plan. And I always say that diversity is not an obstacle in class, but rather a source of enrichment that promotes different forms of learning and inclusive practices so that you can delete learning barriers to learn. And as Daniel Collin says, if we teach students to find inclusion as something normal, we don't have to talk about inclusion, but rather to assist it. And finally, for the evaluation part, I would like to reference it to Santos Guerra, which is a well-known pedagogue and educator, and he always says that evaluation is not a technical process, but rather an ethical one. And I like this perspective. As for me, evaluation is not to judge, to measure, or to classify, but rather to explain, to reorientate, and even to motivate in the learning process. And for this, feedback is essential. I also make use of different techniques and tools, such as observation, tacit revision, interviews, and tools such as rubrics, checklists, so I make the learning process more inclusive. Besides, there are different stages in the evaluation process. We have the initial evaluation, the continuous evaluation, and the ordinary evaluation. The initial one takes place at the beginning of the course, so that we know the level of our student. And we know it thanks to the observation, interviews, and also previous reports of previous years. It also takes place at the beginning of each didactic unit, so we know the prior knowledge of our students. Then we have continuous evaluation, and it takes place throughout the whole learning process, not only at the end of it. So we can control the progress of our students and adjust teaching if needed. And an effective strategy for this is formative assessment, which is basically to give feedback to our students in different stages through the learning process, not only at the end of it, which would be summative assessment, which is the final mark of a didactic unit or even a term. And regarding ordinary evaluation, that would be the final mark of English subject. But how do we know this final mark? Well, in English we have 6 competencies, as we have said before, and they are into 16 assessment criteria, which have the same weight, which is 6.25%. So, to know the final mark, we have to make the average of the assessment criteria of each specific competence, and then the average of the 6 specific competences. And we make use of Seneca to put the marks and have this average. And now, regarding the aspects that we have to evaluate, we have to evaluate students, the teaching practice, and the year plan. So we evaluate a student. Students have to evaluate themselves, the group, and the teacher as well. That will be self-assessment, group assessment, and teacher assessment. And we also have to evaluate our teaching practice. And you can see on page 34 of my year plan the rubric that I have used to evaluate this, with the indicators, the achievement indicators, the tools, and the evidence, highlighting the importance of the effectiveness of the general and specific
24, bien.
En casa no
Muy bien, ¿no? Muy segura, mucho más segura, mucho más, muchísimo más. ¿Dónde te pones colorada? No está en chapeta para nada, muy buen temple, muy tranquilo. Venga,
Bueno, a ver.
dale, guapi. Good luck.
Thank you. Now that I have presented the theoretical aspects of the year plan, I will explain how these theoretical aspects are put into practice in our didactic unit. So, let me present the didactic unit number 8, titled If You Came to Visit Us. This is what you will see. It takes place in the second term from the 24th of February to the 19th of March. And it complies with all the legal requirements of the year plan 24-25 that you have in your hands, with a detailed chart in page number 3 and 4 of the legal framework. This didactic unit is clearly justified as I said before, the village where this high school is located is notable for the presence of Bible quarries, and they have been nominated to World Heritage Site. So the town hall has decided to hold several events to support this fact. And this has arisen a great deal of emotion among my students. So the high school has decided to take part of this e-twinning project that I explained before. And we will receive their visit in the month of May in the didactic unit 11. So in this didactic unit, we will concentrate on service learning, and we will show our town to the students, showing different organization, activities, facilities, and what we will see when they come to visit us. So, the center of interest of the didactic unit would be the e-twin visit. And it is justified according to Illinois as it's entitled 1 Chapter 3, Article 23. We find the main goals of education, and one of them, which is we have the knowledge of their area and culture and that of others. Basically, they are doing that. Besides, it is also justified according to the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, which is about sustainable cities and communities, and also all the pedagogical principles that have been taken into account. It is an interdisciplinary project in which different departments will take part, such as digitalization, technology, the Spanish language, or even arts. And it will take part of the FEMA program in the field of, in the areas of art, creativity and culture, and the line of action of Andalusian heritage. So, the final product will consist of a virtual tour of the town. Virtual tour of the town to e-twinning colleagues. As I said before, showing different places of interest, such as the health center, different aspects of the high school, or associations or activities that they can do when they come to visit us. The unit has also different learning objectives, such as the is based on the order 30th of May 2023, and the specific competencies chosen for this didactic unit have been number 2, 4, 5, and 6. Specified in the creation of a virtual tour, which will be our final product. Also, the use of English as a means of communication and mediation, the use of different linguistic and discursive expressions in this didactic unit, and the knowledge of different cultural patterns. In this case, the St. Patrick's Day, which is going to be celebrated on session number 12. Once we have chosen the specific competencies, I have selected the assessment criteria which best answer to the needs that I have to fulfill, which are 2.1, 4.2, 5.2, and 6.1. And we also have different basic knowledges, which are A1 about self-initiative and confidence, self-confidence and initiative. Then we have the portfolio, A3, which is mediation skills, A4, which are different communicative functions such as asking for direction or giving direction, and also real hypothetical situation. A7, which is the vocabulary related to the unit. A9, which is orthographic conventions. B1 and B2, which are related to the strategies used to create oral tests, such as non-verbal language, for instance. And finally, C3, which is the use of English as a means of communication, and C4, which is the knowledge of cultural patterns, in this case, St. Patrick's Day. Then we will also take into account the pedagogical principles, which all of them have been taken into account, the state goals, highlighting A for assuming duties, B for consolidating habits of disciplines, or for the use of foreign language, and also the key competencies linked to the operational descriptors of the departure profile. That you can see on the template the specific operational descriptors that have been worked in this didactic unit. And as these operational descriptors are linked to the departure profile, which must be achieved by my students, I have to ensure that they have achieved all the key competencies as well as the stage goals. And how do I know that they have achieved them? Thanks to the assessment criteria and the evaluation process, which is going to be explained in some minutes. Then, once the curricular conclusion have been explained, I will make use of the methodology section. So the methodology should be active, engaging, and meaningful, as well as motivating. And all the pedagogical principles must be taken into account. We are going to make use of the different methodologies that I have explained before, and regarding the structure of the didactic unit, they will be divided into the experiential learning method, which is designed and developed by David Cole, and it has different stages, such as motivation, activation, exploration, structuration, activation, application, and construction. Now, regarding methodology, it's also important to talk about the different groupings. As activities will be done individually, in pairs, or in groups. regarding the resources, we have made use of different digital and physical resources, even human in some cases. So the didactic transposition, which I have already mentioned, it is divided into the different stages that I mentioned before. And for the motivation stage, the didactic unit starts with a rhetorical question for brainstorming so that students have to guess what is the unit about. Then we will do a listening comprehension with different activities such as listening for detail about a virtual tour of a city. And they will make use of this thinking routine called headlines, in which students have to summarize the information of the listening in a headline, as if it were a newspaper. Then, for the before in this motivation stage, I will make explicit the contents of the unit, the final product, so the students know from the first day what they have to do and what I expect from them. And now, moving to the activation stage. This stage we will work with the prior knowledge of the students. And we will do this through our metacognition activity titled I think I know I wanted to know. And basically my students tell me what they think they know about the unit, what they wonder and what they wanted to know. So I can make an idea of their previous on prior knowledge. Then we will do a reading about the topic. For the exploration stage, it will start with a warm-up called 1, 2, 3, speak, which is a way also to review previous vocabulary of the different didactic units. And basically it consists of a presentation which is displayed in the board with different semantic fields such as climate change, environment, 21st century challenges, whatever you can imagine. So in pairs, students have to think of a word in their mind, and I show the semantic field, and when they have already thought the word, I say, okay, 1, 2, 3, speak. And that moment they have to say the word. If the word is the same, they receive 1 point. And it's very useful for reviewing vocabulary and maintaining this level. And then they will do some activities about a virtual tour of the British Museum, which is available on their webpage. So they will also be in contact with English culture. And this will serve as a model for the final product that they have to do. The structuration stage, it's normally longer as the contents of the unit are explained in this stage. So the first session is normally devoted to the grammar contents and making use of the flipped classroom. Students are supposed to have watched the videos before in class, different readings and activities. So in class we will review the grammar, which in this case is the conditionals, with a quizzes. In these quizzes, with the results, I know what is the level of the students in this aspect, and we can review with different activities depending on their strengths and weaknesses. Then we will move on to the following session with an activity called activity recall, where students making as well use of the metacognition that I mentioned before, and students have to recall what they have learned in this didactic transposition. And this is very good because students make the gaps and doubts that they have of the unit before making the final product of the written test. So they become more conscious and also active in the learning process. And also they works with the long-term memory, and learning is more meaningful in that case. And then we will work with giving direction, making use of the speaking skill through role plays, for instance. Then the following session is devoted to the writing skill, but before we are going to do an activity called highlight a battle to review the vocabulary of the unit, and students in here will receive a paper with different words of the unit that they have seen through the different listenings, readings and activities of the unit, and in pairs with a different highlighter color. I will give students a definition, a synonym, an antonym, depending on of my goal, and students have to circle the correct word. If they have the word correct, they will receive 1, 2, 3 points, depending on the difficulty and the way I also address attention to diversity, which is also important. And then they will move on to the writing skill. Writing will take place in class, and they then will hand the writings to me, making use of the checklist that I will provide them. So they make sure that they have used different connectors, they have divided ideas into paragraphs, or they have made use of the discourse and linguistic expressions learned in this didactic unit, for instance. When I correct writings, I always make use of a proofreading code, such as this one, and basically I tell the students what type of mistakes they have and where they are. And as a second stage, they have to self-correct themselves in future sessions. And finally, session number 12. Session number 8 is going to be devoted to exit tickets, the final part, which is also another metacognition activity to know the doubts before the creation of the final product, which will take place in the application stage. In this application stage, they will do the second part of the writing, so they can correct themselves, the mistakes that they have had, and also they will do the script of the final product. And they can also rehearse in class, because the videos of the virtual tour will be recorded in the afternoons, as the students want to be moving around the town, showing in the video the different facilities and points of interest of the town. And finally, for the conclusion stage, they will make a written test with the content of the didactic unit. They will also have assessment, which is basically self-assessment with an end of unit reflection, and also group assessment, and also teacher assessment. And now we'll move on to the attention to diversity measures. So, I always make use of the julio, as I said before, as you can see specifically the concrete examples of this didactic unit on the template, but I would like to highlight the collaborative Padlet, which would be like a visual glossary, which students will be doing through the different sessions of the didactic unit. When they find a word that they don't know the meaning in a listening or an activity, and they will write this word in English with its definition in English as well, the Spanish translation, an image when possible, and also a sentence in context. So they can choose what is the best answer for them to, the best way, for them to study vocabulary. And the same happens with this grammar explanation. They will have in the blog Spanish explanation, English explanation, and also my video